So Rebecca, can we breathe or not?
You can breathe.
So we're waiting for people to come in, right? Okay.
Mhm.
Let's get a few people in.
Um, Hello, everybody. Welcome, everyone, to the 14th Annual Social Responsibility Forum. My name is Rebecca, and I'm a coordinator at the IE Net Impact Lab. Our theme this year explores how all of us can reimagine capitalism to create a more just and sustainable world. That's why we've invited this panel of experts in technology and impact to discuss how we can leverage technology to make a positive impact for people and the planet. The question of how we can take advantage of technology's intrinsic scalability to scale up solutions to societal and environmental challenges has become incredibly relevant this year. Our welfare and economic future depend on it. The moderator of this panel is Balvinder Pawar. Bal has extensive experience leading business, social, cultural, media, and technology projects in Spain and globally. He is founding partner of innovative international aerospace projects and consultancies with important stakeholders across the world. Many of you will also know him for his fabulous work as business mentor at the Founders Institute, as well as a professor and business mentor at IE Business School in subjects related to leadership, team management, innovation, and entrepreneurship. Wow.
Thank you very much, Rebecca. It's an honor to be a part of this event. And also good news for everybody. I've actually shifted from aeronautics and more in the industries of well-being and also about ethical food production. So there's a shift for me. That's why it was very interesting for me to be a part of this event. So we want to make this a lively and interactive debate. So I'm just going to explain the structure. We have 1 hour. We'll make the most of it. We've been very lucky that the Net Impact Club and the IE students have organized this, an amazing initiative with all their free time and hard work. And also we've been able to gather an amazing panel with incredible experience with work around the world. So the basic structure, I'm going to make well, you've had the introduction about me, a bit about rules of engagement. We're going to do our best, of course, to be respectful, to make this a lively and interesting debate. We're going to ask the panelists to give their opinions. We're going to flow with the questions. And also what we're going to try to do is that the audience online, that you can ask your questions while you're hearing the responses, and we'll feed that into the flow of the session. So we don't have to wait to do that at the end. So what I'm going to do next, I'm going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves and talk about their expertise and maybe a start of comment. And then we'll go through the flow of the questions and then we will wrap it up. So I'm going to ask just for 2 or 3 minutes, each member of the panel, we have 3 of them. There's one who should be joining us a little bit later, Nicola. So just to give a brief introduction who they are, although you've seen it on the flyer, and also a first comment that they'd like to make, and then we'll get into the flow of the session. So to be polite, maybe we can say ladies first. We have Alicia, Uli, and Francisco. Please, can I ask you, Alicia, just to introduce yourself and also to make any starting comment about reimagining tech and what are the challenges and the opportunities when we think about tech for good. Please go ahead, Alicia.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon in some of the countries already. As Val said, my name is Alicia Mancheno. I am a telecoms engineer and an MBA. I have more than or around 25 years experience. I'm older than I look. And, and in the very, very first stages of my professional life, I already got involved with projects related to cities and to buildings. So I am an expert in smart cities and also in industrial IoT. I am a teacher and a professor in IE as well as a managing director of an IoT company in Spain called Alicent. My feeling about the last 25 years is that we have moved in the right direction to look after our planet and also to look after our people. However, I still think companies need to be more inclusive and to be more merged with the society and to give back to the society part of what they get from not only from their benefits, also about how their employees behave and how the employees think and feel about the company and about the community. And I think this is the right panel to talk about this. Val, back to you.
Thank you, Licia, and very interesting. I remember a comment you made earlier about there's already a big benefit regarding carbon emission. So you look outside in a greener world. We don't want to go back to a world that's so contaminated. So already tech in that way is getting there. But there are many other questions about how we can make that positive difference in a conscious way. So thank you for that starting comment. I'd like to maybe pass to Uli, and then we'll have Francisco.
Yes, hi everybody. Great to be on this virtual platform and to discuss about such an interesting topic across Europe. My name is Uli Grabenwatter. I am officially at the European Investment Fund, but as a matter of fact, I stopped working some 20 years ago. And since then, I'm only doing things that I'm passionate about. And that includes heading the investment activities in technology and innovation at European Investment Fund. And besides that, I'm doing also some teaching and investing in technology startups, mostly in the life sciences space on my proper account. And yeah, so the topic of today, reimagining capitalism. I think it is a fascinating topic because if we look at our business environments today, you could possibly say that if you are about to embark in a professional environment, in a professional life, and if you were hoping for having a kind of smooth ride without any big excitements and having a stable income, a stable perspective, you probably are born in the wrong time because that's definitely not something that is going to happen anywhere soon. But if you're out there wanting to find opportunities how to change the world, and bless us, we have got plenty of things that we need to change, then probably there has never been a more exciting time than these days.
Thank you very much, Uli. So it's an exciting time. There's a lot of opportunity. And I think also COVID is a tough situation, but it's an opportunity to reset. And what I'm going to ask you after the session is, can you be my career coach? Because I want to live like you. I think we'd all like to retire early and just focus on our passion. So that's a good thing. So now we have Francisco, please, an introduction and a starting comment, and we'll get into the flow. Thank you.
Sure, Val. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for connecting here. Today, we have actually a special session about how technology can use for social good. I'm here representing Voluntequis, a nonprofit where we are trying to create a community all around the globe where basically people like you help other people using technology, right? And this happened well, we founded this in 2015 already, 5 years ago, thinking about, okay, how can we use technology not just for staying every day with Instagram, like connected to our smartphone, TV, on Netflix, and then also addicted to the inbox, but we can use technology not just for ourselves and for being more productive, but also for helping other people that need it.
So thank you very much, Francisco. So we get into it. And as we said at the beginning, and this is being recorded because many people couldn't be in the session now, but they'll see it at another time. So please send your questions while you're listening into the chat, and we will feed them into the conversation. So I would say maybe a very open question. What do we think are the main opportunities and challenges today regarding reimagining technology for good? What are the biggest opportunities and at the same time the challenges? What are some big things going on regarding that? So please, I'll open it up to the panel. Who'd like to start? What is a big, go ahead, Alicia.
Well, Uli, do you want to go first?
No, go ahead. Ladies first. We stay polite.
Uli's retired, he can wait.
Okay, so Balas, as you were already mentioning before, for me, we have already using technology for good in some ways. Like, for example, without knowing it, the mere use of the shared use of video conferencing is already saving tons of CO2 in air travel, for example. This is pretty obvious. But when we deployed and we designed video conferencing, we didn't think about that. So technology is already helping us to solve at least a part of sustainability in the environment. For me, the next step has to be to understand that there are also a downside, a dark side of technology that many times we are not aware. And we were mentioning before as well that, for example, when we think about autonomous cars, we think this is wonderful. We have this vision of people reading email or reading their books while the car travels around. But this is not applicable to everybody in the society. There are many people that either they will not have access to these cars, they don't have a job that allows them to work while they are traveling, or they are simply not literate enough in the, digital literate to use this kind of means. So when we design technology, sometimes we are, let's say, we are provoking other things that will damage people. In this case, it is already quite widespread that autonomous cars will generate gentrification of country places or far away places. And this is pretty obvious with the COVID as well. People that can allow and can afford to buy a new house in the countryside, they are doing it. So maybe places that were cheaper to live or they were quiet, now they are becoming crowded, they are becoming more expensive. Prices of the houses are increasing. So this is something that is related to technology as well. And for me, it's important that when we, as companies, as we are talking about capitalism, so we are in a private company environment, when we design a product, when we design a new technology, we think of how this will affect other people that are not cannot afford or that don't have access to this technology. So it's a challenge to improve how we live, but it's a challenge that when we improve the way of living of some people, other people is not left behind.
Thank you, Alicia. Very good comment. I think that's, technology is very sexy, we could say, but the downside, as you said, giving people access, making more democratic, and not having the situation where you're excluding people because of choice. So other people don't have choice, maybe because of economic reasons, or a change in how we live, as you said, the way that people are moving away to the villages, and then it becomes more expensive. Now, I'd like Uli or Francisco to make some comments around that and what you'd like to say regarding the opportunity and the downsides. How do you see that? So please.
Well, I'll come back later on also to the comment of technology fostering social inclusion, because I think it's indeed a very important topic. But maybe let me start off first when we talk about the opportunity of technology with a flashback to previous situations comparable or similar to the one that we're currently in, which is basically a big humanitarian, but also a huge economic crisis. And if you look at it from the perspective of 2000, the technology crash, there actually technology has been at the origin of the crisis because it has been basically driven by overheated and totally unrealistic markets. In 2008, 2009, technology markets and venture capital backed businesses have been basically a footnote to Socrates, and nobody took really note of it because we had much bigger problems to face, like saving our banking systems and things like that. And if you look at it from today's perspective, actually you realize in all the public action that is taken to bring our society back on rails after what we've been going through over the last few months, suddenly you realize that technology companies are at the heart of public attention. And that has a very big particular reason, which is that for the first time in history, since we rely on technology-driven business models, we have found out that this time we need systemic changes that cannot be brought about without technology. And I think that is a very massive difference compared to what we had in the past. And if you look at it purely from the context of the pandemic, which we all have to deal with on a global basis. If you look at it from how we went about getting control over this pandemic, which probably we still haven't, but we are on a pathway to improving things. But if you compare this situation to the pandemic of the plague 750 years ago in Europe, and if you look at it, how we have been dealing with this pandemic, you actually find out that we haven't been doing much different than what we did 700 years ago. We've been trying to isolate people that have been infected. We've been trying to cut contact chains. We have been segregating people, communities, geographies, and the like. And we're trying to get that under control. And we've been doing the same thing this time around, but with the difference that now we are living in a much more connected world, in a globalized world, and the impact of every decision that we're taking is so much bigger. So while we are debating, and that maybe links to the downside of technology, we have had over the last few months a huge debate in the public space of whether we should give priority to protecting public health, or whether we should give priority to securing private information and the data that is stored and information that is stored about individuals. And actually, while we are having this debate, if we actually are totally honest, we are today in a situation where we had not to choose between the two. Because technology today allows us to trace risk in a society without having to disclose where a person that potentially is a carrier of a virus has contracted the virus. You can have that information without passing on to society which mistress has been met by whom and has led to an infection. That is something that we actually can overcome. The problem that we currently still have is that we don't trust technology to have the potential. And I think that is one of the areas that we need to work on. I'll pause here to leave space for more discussion.
Sure. No, Uli, thank you very much. And it's something I talk a lot about. It's about trust. We have simple examples of Facebook has had a massive backlash, and hardly anybody under 25 uses Facebook anymore because you don't trust how they use their data. And interestingly, in South Korea, there was a scandal a few months ago when they were doing the tracing regarding COVID, because people could see other people's movements and find a lot about their personal lives. So the way we're interconnected has positives like now, but it also, what do we do with the data? And there's an ethical side to it. Now, I'd like to pass it over to Francisco. And also we have a question, maybe we can weave in from one of the participants online, Lucas, who talks, and I think we're talking about the digital divide. And that's something we started off with Alicia. So please, Francisco.
Yeah, let me jump here also about trust. So normally, as you mentioned, we're faced every day with Facebook, Instagram, inbox, like many tools that we believe are making our lives better. But in fact, if we are not paying for them, at some point we're the product, right? So my point would be, do we think these technology companies are good per se because they are offering so many things for us for free? Is technology actually good in itself, or does it have a persevere, like, let's say, a dark side? So in this point, in this regard, I would like to mention also the business model behind the technological companies is basically, as far as today, just maximizing shareholder value. And that means generating revenue behind the tools, and that points basically to you as a user spending more time on your screen, whether you are on Instagram, whether you are on Facebook. So yeah, do we trust technological companies to actually drive that movement or that technology for good? Or at some point, do we need to protect people by regulating these technological companies, which at some point are even bigger than many governments in the world? So yeah, we need to create, as Uli was mentioning, some kind of regulation to actually regulate that. And at some point also protect users' data on cybersecurity mainly.
Okay, thank you. So cybersecurity there. And also you touched on things like profit versus value. I'd like, before we get into other questions, if anybody could answer specifically on the question from Lucas about any ideas about this digital divide and what are things that we can do about it or are being done that you've seen in your experience and in your fields. Would anybody like to comment on that before we move on to another area? It doesn't have to be all of you, but does anybody have a response there about that? You know, what can we do? You know, we know there's an issue about access and some equality, but what can we do? And maybe examples of what have you seen being done? Would anybody like to comment? Alicia?
Yeah, I can comment on that. From my point of view, technology today is really cheap. So the digital divide is not so much a matter of money. Many times it's a matter of education. So for me, one important thing is maybe we cannot educate any more people of a certain age, but we have to start by educating younger generations in all the countries. We are talking about, for example, technology and companies and so on. The fact is that we have many countries where still even a basic phone, not even a very, very smartphone, just a basic phone is a luxury. So for me, the first step would start by educating younger generations. And there are many non-profit organizations and NGOs that are doing this effort. My advice here, or my publicity here is that I collaborate with a non-profit organization called Technovation, that every year they organize a challenge for girls between 10 and 18. So they are encouraged to find a simple community problem they find around them, and produce an app, a mobile app for solving it. So they do a complete entrepreneur program in just 12 weeks, and it's amazing what they can find, that they can reach at the end of the program. And there is an international competition, a challenge, where they are awarded prizes at the end. So they have this incentive also to finish the program. I will type where you can join or you can learn more about this, but in general, United Nations and many other international bodies are encouraging education for the younger generations. And I hope in just one generation we can fill this gap. And as Francisco was saying before, stop younger people just to watch Instagram or Facebook and become makers of technology, and become, let's say, understand that technology can help them to solve problems, not just to consume some contents.
Thank you, Licia. So technology can help to solve problems, not just about consumption, and also the important role of education. Even though we think because technology is much cheaper, everyone has access, it's not always the same. So again, any other comments on that? And maybe we can touch the point you mentioned, please, Uli, and then I'm going to ask Francisco a little bit more about the cybersecurity angle, because that also touches on use of data. So Uli, please.
Yeah. Now, I agree with what has been said before. Maybe I'll give one additional dimension, which might sound a little bit more philosophical, because I think when we talk about solutions that we need to bring to society, we frequently have the tendency to seek a gateway where we can delegate the solution of a specific problem. But I'd very much advocate for humbleness when we look at anything that we perceive as being a solution out there, be it technology, be it capitalism, be it money, be it regulation. All those dimensions that we're talking about are only means to achieving a goal. It's not the solution in itself. It is a question how we use technology that will decide whether technology will be helping us to overcome digital divide. It will be the way how we use capitalism, the way how we use money, whether we can overcome social divides in the world, whether we can give people access to drinking water, whether we can give them people access to decent nutrition and things like that. So I think whenever we think about what we can do with one of those tools that we've got in our hands, we need first to start off with the basic assumption is that nothing is going to happen unless we make it happen. And that is an appeal to us as individuals, that is an appeal to us as consumers, that is an appeal to us as voters, but that's also an appeal to us as entrepreneurs and engineers and brilliant minds that actually can make a change happen with the inventions that we bring forward.
Well, thank you very much, Uli. And that touches on something we'll come back to later from a student, somebody online as well, thinking we're very conscious about the impact of what we do now even more. It's not just a CSR policy. So somehow it feels more authentic. And also as consumers, we're a lot more critical. So it's a bit fuzzy right now, but when we feel we have to do something or the needs meet, it really happens. It's like online working, distributed working. Before it was a nice to have, it was a secondary option. Now it's almost becoming the first option because the mix of the situation and also the economic impact of the pandemic on companies, where they're going to have to reduce the cost of using physical locations. Please, Francisco, please come in. We're trying to weave this all in. Go ahead.
Exactly. Well, thanks again. I would like to start by basically answering the other question from Sander, right, about basically cybersecurity, right? No, I don't believe cybersecurity is at the same stage or the same level. Technology is evolving. Technology, as you know, is evolving exponentially, and for some reason, mainly investment, cybersecurity is only a fraction of what it should be, right? We are seeing only top tech companies are investing so much in cybersecurity because of the threats they have, and they are hosting a lot of data. But most all the companies, as you can see, many banks, many financial institutions, insurance, renewables, many other companies are being attacked because of the data, right? The data now is the new oil, or what they say, right? And they are not investing so much in cybersecurity. And at the same time, we have people actually focusing on targeting those companies. There are many ways of attacking a company, and it's barely possible to actually be 100% protected if you're not disconnected. And because of the benefits that getting connected remains, saying in the cloud, we're pushing a lot of companies to the cloud too, but it has a risk, right? So I think there should be a balance between your cybersecurity investments and also the data use you want to do. And by that combination, we will see some companies that actually fall because of this and cybersecurity attacks. And we will see also probably most companies investing more and more on cybersecurity. So yeah, I think it's a hot topic and a hot place to be.
Thank you, Francisco. And what we've also seen, even from IE's viewpoint, at IE University, we're one of the first universities to start a specific master's on cybersecurity and big data. And Rebecca, one of the organizers, actually on the Masters of Big Data. So the interesting part, these are becoming standalone departments for companies. Before they were hidden and gray behind the scenes. But maybe that question is it just to serve the customer and create consumption? Or is there an aspect of that around making positive impact? So maybe that's what's interesting for us, because the talk is also about how can technology leverage good? And it feeds into a comment from somebody online, Georgie, who said, when we're thinking about setting up our companies and our startups, how can we have that intention of positive impact without the negative effects from the beginning? Because I see that we're talking a lot about the UN sustainable goals, but how can we put that into what we're doing at the beginning? So it's not about creating an impact, analyzing it, maybe being negative and trying to turn it around, but we can put it into the foundations of what we do. How can we have that intention from the beginning? So I think a lot of it is about that intentionality and how we bring it to the marketplace, when before this was a bit nice to have. So any thoughts on that? Like, what can we start with if we have this on our mind, but to actually make it happen? Because it can be a bit of a cloudy topic, yes? How can we build it in from the beginning? Uli, as an investor in startups, I mean, you can help us there.
Yes, I'm happy to address that question, because I think we may not be aware or sufficiently aware about what's going on out there in the market and how actually societal trends and behaviors shift as we speak. When I started investing in venture capital and private equity some 25 years ago, anything that was related to societal responsibility was something that you needed to get at least into a framing where you were avoiding doing harm. So otherwise you would have been bashed by consumers and things like that, and that was no good. 10 years later, we have been in a situation where people and companies used societal impact as a marketing instrument, saying we are doing good and we are the kind of nice boys and girls in the market, and you can trust it and things like that. And today, actually, when you are asking how can I bring a societal impact intentionally into a business model from the outset, well, you have never been in a better situation to do than today. Because if we look at business models today, what they're going to be valued for is with the value that they bring to a societal solution to challenges that we need to solve for society. So basically, from a kind of need to deal with aspect 20 years ago, we are today in a situation where we actually can make impact, societal impact, our value proposition, our selling proposition as a company. And that is something that is not just happening in the dreams, that is not just happening something in Wonderland that people imagine. There are venture capital firms in Europe that are advertising on their website that they want to invest in entrepreneurs that are smart enough not to create technologies with the intention that they are not abused, but actually that they create technologies that cannot be abused. And that is precisely, and there was a question in the market, in the chat room, asking whether we are as far as being able to trust tracing apps and things like that. There are entrepreneurs and there are venture capitalists out there that actually want to invent technologies that do not depend on the human ethical standards, that they are not abused, but actually that they're construed from the outset, that you have never in one place sufficient information about somebody, an individual, a process or a business or whatever, that you actually can abuse it. And I think that is a technological trend that that we can, from the outset, when we build businesses, that we can exploit to get us to a level where we don't have to behave or to depend on the behavior of individuals anymore, but where we actually can create a space that is safe to live in technology.
Thank you, Yuli. Very good answer there, very complete one. So creating a safe space. Also, the needs are meeting. Also, I see regarding talent, it's been a bit knocked now because of COVID, because the stomach isn't full, so you're worried about money. But before COVID, you know, I'd see the students that I have, they wouldn't be looking just at income. They'd be looking at a place to where their values can live. So also to attract the right talent, it's also about your impact. But as you said, Uli, it's a great time to think about it because it's something inside. And I think it also touches on another question that we have regarding regulation. Is regulation a good thing? How do we manage it? Does it stop innovation? Does it make it safer? What's going on there? So, Alicia.
Regulation. That's a very good point. From my point of view, some regulation is needed in many sense. First, this is, I think I'm spoiling all my. I am starting my Smart Cities course this Friday, and I think I'm spoiling all my classes. But anyway, so let's take regulation in the means of standardization is really needed if you want to scale. And this is one of the questions of today: scale up of technology. So if we don't have certain standardization of how systems should be done or they should interface with each other, you would find that there would be thousands of companies designing similar things and could never scale up, or they could fight against each other instead of collaborating. So for me, some level of standardization of what we do is necessary in technology. Then when we talk about regulation as of, let's say, government regulation, which is slightly different, not technical regulation, still I think some regulation about data, for example, about not cybersecurity, but also about the use we do of data is necessary, not only by private companies, big tech companies, as we were saying before, also by the governments. And this links to the question about the tracing applications. Why probably in Korea, in Southeast Asia in general, tracing applications are used and no one thinks about what the government would do with that. Maybe they trust their governments more than we in Spain do. So this is I think Francisco doesn't he doesn't agree, so he can react now.
Well, that's a good thing. It's like, why do we watch programs? Because they have a bit of drama and conflict. And it's not about conflict, but we need to have the different viewpoints. That adds a bit of edge to that. But it's good about talking about standardizing and the idea of collaboration. I'm saying it a lot. Maybe countries now will become more nationalistic and protective, but nobody can stop collaboration due to technology. And also you touched on something regarding culture. So in Asian cultures, it's more about the common good and not the individual goods. So maybe they can tolerate things that we might find unacceptable in Europe. So please, Francisco, how would you like to respond?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we're different than in different parts of the world. Definitely, there is a bunch of different GDPR or data protection regulations, right? My point here would be, no, I don't think the government or any kind of public regulator has the level of skills and knowledge enough to actually regulate the industry. We are seeing the regulations come far behind, 10, 15 years behind. And if you see just in the United States, where all the tech companies were to the same age, right? The question that were asked, like, if you see them, it was like, okay, clearly these people don't have the knowledge enough to actually protect ourselves. So I think one part should be coming from the technology companies that actually themselves are somehow self-regulated. And that starts by regulating yourself as a company, as Google is trying to do with the don't be evil principle, right? But at some point, also the users need to understand what the technological companies implies. And okay, if you're using Google and you're not paying anything, why is that? And how are they making money, right? Once you understand that, you can start seeing, okay, they're pushing me towards different kinds of marketing, and that means the users at some point need to regulate also technological companies. Okay, I know it's difficult to imagine that, because at some point, basically, we are given something for free and then we just take it. But at some point, we need to educate people on, okay, when someone is giving you something for free, why is that? And do you need to use it or why not?
Thank you, Francisco. So regulation, there are many sides to the coin. Now, I'd like to introduce Nicolo. Very grateful that you could join us. You're in the medical field. We heard you in the hospital. Hope everything is fine. But just
I'm really sorry.
That's fine, Nicolo. We're happy that you're here.
As a young doctor, I'm not still able to control my time. I'm not the responsible. My patients are the responsible of my time.
No,
so
Nicolo.
I'm sorry, but
really.
I had a
very
much issue.
We're talking about impact of technology, and where is it more important than in health? You know, I think we can all be grateful. Recently, just a brief story, I was 10 days in the hospital a month ago because of COVID. And basically the hospital saved my life. And all of the people attending me and looking after me had suffered COVID in March, and they're still on the front line. So what you do has so much meaning. It's the most important thing that we have. If we do not have health, we don't have anything else. So please don't apologize. You're doing very important work. So just to bring you up to speed, we've talked about technology and how it can leverage positive impact in society, opportunities, challenges. We've touched on education, we touched on regulation, we talked about are we doing enough? We talked about access. You know, it's unfair sometimes. We say that technology is cheaper, but not everybody has access, or even technology can take people out of the equation because you change society. So if you're ready for that, we'd like your input. Just a little brief intro who you are. You're working in the health sector. We know you work with startups as well. And also maybe a first point that you'd like to share regarding impact and technology in the health sector. Please, Nicolo.
Okay, so thank you very much and really appreciate your words. My name is Nicola Maurizzi. I'm a young doctor, but you know, being 29, I've already had some experience in the field of cardiology. I'm actually working in cardiology at the University Hospital of Lausanne in Switzerland, where I collaborate 3 weeks per month, and I'm still collaborate with the University of Florence, where I carry out most of my research projects. I basically deal with genetic cardiomyopathies. But beside that, I had the chance to launch a very beautiful adventure during my age of university, having a specific background myself as a patient as well. Unfortunately, I have experienced most of the challenges that, you know, the patients might be experienced, specifically cardiac patients. And so we launched a company because, it was a startup. Now it's transforming into a small company, which produces smartphone-based devices for cardiovascular health. So I really feel touched by the discussion that you're making and how technology can make positive impacts. You know, at the beginning of my journey in this field with this company that we produce a smartphone-based device, and that was able to record the ECG. You know, it's very simple parameters of all, the most basic parameters of, you know, to assess the cardiac health. And we, you know, as a young guys, we really believe that, you know, this could be something very useful, meaning, you know, low cost, high technology devices that might be helpful for also people in area where technology access is not much there. And we launch a lot of experience, a lot of trials, specifically in Senegal, Kenya, South Africa, and Rwanda, and other places in Africa. And we collected amazing data. We did very, very beautiful, we produced very beautiful evidence that, you know, technology might bridge the gap between the cities and the rural area. But all the experience that we had so far, they were really like drops in the ocean. And still, as a doctor, as an entrepreneur, as a human being, I'm not still capable to understand why, despite we have evidences, despite we have the devices, despite we have the technology, and despite there is you know, there are the money there, we still miss the last but most important part. So being this, you know, a talk about how technology really impacts our lives and what we do, well, why are we not really able to bring technologies that might be count to save lives, and we have evidence for that, in the end of everybody? That's really something I'm not able to answer that. I'd like you to have an idea if you can help me, because, you know, despite, you know, being a scientist, I produce evidences that might be changing the policy makers and everything. I produce evidence, but nothing changed. Why is that?
Nicola, big question there, very big one. And also that touches on policies regulation. As one example, I gave up my work in media. I used to be a television presenter a few years ago to be an aid worker. And I was head of country for East Timor in 2006, very dangerous country. And I was working in the management side, but I quickly got very demotivated because I couldn't see the impact of my work, and everything became extremely political. So as an example, I had somebody with me in the hotel where I was staying, and I asked him, what do you do? He said, I work for the UN. What is your job? Well, I make Excels to give information about the stocks of food we have in the warehouse. So I said, how are the stocks? The stocks are great. But what about the poverty? Haven't you seen what's going on in the streets? Children are dying. I said, that's not my concern. So I was so shocked by that, I actually left that role, and the only work I do now is directly with the beneficiary. So there are many things about that. Okay, so, you know, if anybody would like to touch on that before we get on to other points, we have another 15 minutes left. So that divide between technology being sexy and yes, and the access, but then the actual impact on the ground. And we can add into this about, is this situation of a pandemic making it better or worse? Please go ahead.
Well, can I take have a go at that, because I think it's a very relevant question, and I think I would probably come in with a rather sobering assessment of what regulation can do and what policymaking can do. My appeal would be, don't rely on regulation to change things. We are actually in an environment where we are so fast-paced in the change that we actually need to have, and as a matter of fact, also the change that is happening, that regulation can never keep up with it. The thing that for me is going to be the most powerful regulator in the future is the transparency that we create about businesses in the world. And technology is a very important token to this transparency, because we are living in a digitalized world where actually whenever something derails in the context of a company, it becomes so publicly, so globally known within instances, within instance, that actually the marketing manager of that company hasn't even woken up in the morning yet, and everybody in the world knows already about it. And I think this is the type of influence that we can create with technology and on technology that will drive where we are going to get to. If we are waiting for policies to secure our SDG goals, if we are looking at regulation to secure our SDG goals, I think we're going to be dead by a very long margin before we actually are getting there. I think we've lost Paul. It might have been a statement.
Hello. Yeah, it seems so. That's all right. So there is a question from Elena Martinez on the chat, slightly different from this. It is, what changes do you expect this pandemic to trigger in corporate organizations, startups, investment approaches with regards to impact?
Let me take that one. So, Elena, I would like to answer your question in two things, two sides, let's say. I would love to this pandemic actually make companies and corporate organizations to actually foster impact investment, right? But unfortunately, I would say I honestly believe that this pandemic will probably translate into less capital available for companies to invest on impact, whether they're doing social responsibility or whether they're actually investing in some kind of business that actually are socially impactful, let's say that way. So yeah, I would honestly think this won't be the case. I'm sorry.
That's a very hopeful answer.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to say, yeah, this is gonna change the way we're doing things, but maybe some companies will do, but I honestly don't see this as a game changer.
Mm-hmm. Val, I just raised Elena Martinez's question regarding whether the pandemic would trigger any changes in the corporate organizations, startups, investment approaches as to impact.
Perfect. Sorry about that, because I lost the Zoom connection for a reason, but I'm back. No problem.
I was going to mention also that maybe some other panelists have a different opinion than mine, and maybe they're somehow some more positive, hopefully. What about Uli?
But I kind of avoided what the pandemic is changing. I think in terms of corporate behavior, it is not just the pandemic that is changing something. I think it's the awareness of us having to do things differently that is making this paradigm shift. And before the pandemic actually arrived in Europe, we had this discussion on how we are going to deal with climate change and sustainability of environment, things like that. And then we had the discussion, should we shelve climate and dedicate our attention to the pandemic? And when the pandemic is dealt with, then we can return to climate. I think we need to realize that we are living in an era where we cannot trust that the problems that we have to solve will come to us in the shape of a Maslow pyramid. It's not going to be that we have to to save our survival first, and then we can look after food, and then somewhere down the road we can maybe look at ballet classes to be displayed on TV that we're enlightened or whatever. That's not going to happen. We've got basically 10 years left to secure the most vital goals under the SDGs that we have to deal with. I mean, probably don't have to deal with all of them to 100% by the year 2030, but there are some of them that actually, if we are not tackling them in substance, we are not going to live the luxury of the Millennium Goals where we had an extension. This is not football. There is no extra time that we are going to get. And I think that is the type of things that is starting to sink in with the consciousness of business leaders, not because they suddenly have become philanthropists or because they have become managers of charities, but because they've understood that value creation in today's environment, which by the way is driving their bonus payments, is not purely based on profits, but is about creating value to society. And there are certainly businesses out there that will exist another 10, 15, 20 years that will make money against this emerging logic, but there are more and more businesses that will do well because they have adopted this new logic, and they will actually sample the crowd around them.
And I think Nicola wants to comment. And one thing, I'll comment about one company I worked with recently, Salesforce. They have a philosophy called Ohana, where before they actually started the company and before they constituted the company legally, they said we will give 1%
The 1%,
yeah, 1% of our profit, 1% of our services, 1% of our employee time to others and to charity. Now that 1% is worth hundreds of millions, and they see their obligation as their impact on society as well. But I'm sure that's helped them to be so successful, especially regarding attraction of talent. And Nicola, I'd like you to make, one comment now, and then I'm going to ask you to do a wrap up as we have around 10 minutes left. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, but I really like to comment on this question, which I feel very timely. I mean, as a doctor, I deal with problems, no? If everything goes well, you don't come to the doctor. And of course, pandemia is a problem. We are full of problem. We are full of limitation. We are, our life has been really, really changed radically. Therefore, we are full of problems to be solved. What I can tell as someone who underwent the adventure of a startup and everything, that pandemia is something that unfortunately create massive opportunities, because opportunities are where problems are. Okay, if everything goes well, I don't need to change. If everything doesn't go well and I'm full of unmet needs, that is the moment where I have to change. And let me really, I'm a fish out of the box during this conversation, because I'm someone who did studies in medical theory and cardiology, but having the chance to speak with people who deal with economics, with brilliant young mind that deal with economics and deal with growth and deal with possibility to change things, the only thing I might be loving to say to them and to share with them is that every single of us has his own battle, and you have to choose your own field. You cannot deal at the same time with climate change, with COVID issues and everything. And please, guys, select your own battle, choose your own problem to solve, be the most expert in this given field, because only by that you'll be finding the right solution. Listen to the people who are already dive into this problem. Listen to the people who have the dirty ends about this problem, because this is the only way. And I believe pandemia, despite there is less capital, we see this with our enterprise, we see as a doctors, but it's full of problem. So capital will follow, because if you solve a problem, if you do an impact, everything will follow you. But please choose your own problem, choose your mission, and dive into it as much as you can, because I believe the only way to be good, there are really few humans that are good at many things. We are good at few things, and so that could be my only message.
Nicola, thank you very much. It's very inspiring. I remember my older brother always said to me he wanted to be rich. And I said, forget being rich, be good at something. And as the startup gurus say, there are three important things: expertise, be good at something, have a good team around you, find a problem opportunity, and have passion. Because passion will take you even in the low points up, that you'll work for something you believe in. Now, we don't have much time left. We only have about 6 minutes. I would like Francisco, Uli, and Alicia just to make their last remarks. Obviously, this is an ongoing conversation. This is a very big topic. We've touched on some of them, but we hope it's a good forum to start the conversation, think about it, and keep on engaging with each other to create value and have positive perspectives and new ways of doing things in a world that's a bit in a reset mode. So please, I'd like to ask Alicia, Uli, Francisco, what is a last message, as Nicola's very inspiring one, you'd like to give our audience and the people who see the recording later on? Alicia, go ahead.
I can go first. You already said if you have the experience and find a problem and solve it, I would add to that, technology is broadly available. Technology is not so expensive, and you don't need to do like a breakthrough technology. Innovation is not about creating completely new things. It's about understanding how things we already have can be used in a different way, in a different field. So take a technology that is already available, probably is already cheap, and you can create new things with this. You can start small, you can collaborate with others, and now there is the way technology is widespread. You don't need to be a big company to make an impact. You can start small and create and follow up from there. So that would be my message.
Thank you, Alicia. And as we say in the entrepreneurship world, there's nothing new under the sun. And there's a model that we can use very much is disruptive innovation, which is actually about creating new markets. So if you create a new market, that doesn't necessarily depend on technology or money all the time. Please, Uli.
Well, I've been talking a lot, so I'd like to possibly only close with an appeal to our audience, of which I presume many of them are students and many of them are looking at the world ahead of them. My appeal to them is don't stop daring to think what never has been thought before. This is the biggest gift that you can give to society and that you can give to yourself for your own future. Remember, the only truth in science is that what has been thought once can never be taken back. So even if you're not in the right moment, and if you think that you will not get the backing immediately for what you're dreaming of, what you're working towards, the fact that it has been thought once will actually make sure that when the time is come, it will realize.
Thank you, Uli. Francisco?
Yeah, my final point would be use technology for good. Technology can amplify the work you're doing and basically scale that up to the whole world. But in the meantime, please don't be evil and just think a little bit about how can you actually leave a better world for a future generation. That's all.
Thank you very much, Francisco. And it goes back to a quote, my favorite quote. Some people think I look like Gandhi, but that would be, a great honor and to be like him. But he said, be the change you want to see in the world. So summarize the opportunity, don't wait for others. And there was another question actually for Nicola regarding medical industry, but I would say that it's in the question Q&A section, but I would say that we're already doing amazing stuff we would never consider before. The idea that we could have an vaccine in record time, that is a part of what's been going on. The only thing maybe lacking because of the economic question is the collaboration. How can we collaborate to find a common solution that a problem affects all of us? So because Nicola came a bit late, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to add any more comment, and then we'll finish. So we're going to give you some love your way. Nicola.
Well, I mean, I thank you very much, but the question you posed me, I mean, it's not so easy to be answered.
But do you see, for example, an acceleration of good things regarding healthcare because of the pandemic, or is it the other way around because of funding or something else? What do you see?
Well, unfortunately, honestly, we've been too much into it as a medical staff. I mean, we didn't, we had our head down because, before arriving here, I had to transfer a patient to the intensive care unit because we had to assist in the ventilation and everything. I believe, however, that this vaccine will arrive and will change finally our world, in the sense that we'll start gradually go back to normality. But there are plenty of opportunities that has not been taken yet. I'll tell you something. We've just published now an article reporting how the ECG and oximeter monitoring of patients with stable COVID disease back home might identify those with evolutive potential. That is to say, those who have a short-term worse clinical outcome. This is something that can be done. We should potentiate technology, should really give the chance, as far as this pandemic is concerned, to treat better patient at home and really refer to the hospital who is in most need. And we have been learning a lot about this disease. We've been learning which are the red flags, which are the things we might be worrying about. And why shall we monitor those things at home on a live base and really, be able to bring in the hospital those who are at risk because of known data that we already have. I see basically really this as a very big potential, because the key on these epidemics will be the vaccine and also the control of people at home. Because, you know, in the hospital, we do this thing we have always been doing with all the pneumonitis. The problem is that we have thousands of pneumonitis. So